Welcome to Joy Junktique. I'm Rhonda, and today I'm going to do a follow-up video to show different things that I made with all of the toilet paper embossed paper. So there were a lot of comments, and I thank y'all for that, and I thank you for all of my new subscribers. I just appreciate y'all being here so much. It just humbles me to know that you like what I created and just want to see more. And just feel free anytime you have any questions or comments or suggestions. I am always open to that, and I just enjoy talking to each of you so much. So thank y'all so much for that. And I thought with all the questions and different things that were talked about in the comments, I thought I would just do a follow-up video. Some of you actually asked for me to come back and show how I use the toilet paper embossed paper. Okay, so before I go any farther, I want to show you some of the projects that I've made, and I'll be putting in some photos from past projects too. But this is what I have made using the stuff that we just did in the video and that I had made right before that. Okay, so here is a sweet, sweet little journal, and if you'll remember, this was the little fabric swatch one, and so I just folded it, and I'm using it as my journal cover. It feels like cloth. I mean, it really does feel like, you know, a type of fabric. So it turned out really well. And then what I did is I just got some little pages here. Here's another piece of the embossed toilet paper that I had just cut the edges off and used it as a page. So I just put some little pages in here. And so how I bound it is I just sewed down the middle with two little rag strips that I had ripped from just a really old little table doily. As I stitched that ribbon in there, the little rag strip in there, and then on the outside I just tied it in a sweet little knot. And it actually still had some of the trim on it, so it added an extra little element there too. And then I had also added a little piece of this vintage little flower lace on the spine. If you want to know where these are from, it's by Boho Love, and I'll link her shop in the description below. She has some gorgeous images, and actually when I first started buying digitals, she was one of the first people that I bought from, and she has just never ceased to amaze me with all the beautiful things she creates. And she does videos too to show you different ways you can use them. So I had just glued this down, added that little lace, and then made a little pocket here. Very, very simple, but I just think it turned out precious. And this just adds such a pretty dimension to it on the front cover. So that's what I did with that one. Now this one I had cut and just I used one of her images. It's actually a little booklet image that has a front and a back to it. And it said memories, but I wanted to add a little bit more depth to it. So I added a little piece of fabric and then another one of her little word tags. And I just added this frame to the photo so that it would look like it was framed. But it's just so pretty. And I just left it just plain. I didn't do anything else to it. And this just has just some little plain pieces of paper here. So there's another one. This is just a little paper bag. And so I had coffee dyed it, and it has a lace pattern on it. And I like to cut this shape out and use it as a corner pocket. And so this one was on coffee dyed paper, but I also went back and inked the edges. And then I went over the top of it, just kind of grungied it up with my distress ink. So I just wanted to make that little pocket on the front. And then here's another one of her pretty little tags. And another little just tiny tag here, and that just tucks down in this little pocket here. And then I'll let this little tag kind of hang over the top of that pocket. But I love using this as a pocket because it actually looks like a doily, so it just adds such a pretty pocket to your pages, or to whatever you want to add a pocket to. And then on the back side I just took one of her other little photos and just put it on there with a tiny little piece of remnant on the side of it. And so this little journal can just tuck down in here, and there you have a sweet little gift bag. So that's what I did with that one. So here was the heart one that I had done with the red tissue paper. And here the corner had wanted to come apart. And so I glued it back, but you could still see the red. So I just took a little bit of my pink chalk paint and painted it there, and then I went back over it with just a tad of the plaster to kind of tone it down. And honestly, you can't even tell it. I added my little sparkle, which is this Luna paste, Cosmic Shimmer Luna paste. This is Stellar Ice, I think it says. So I just kind of rubbed that over the top just to give it a little sparkle. And so this you could just add to a page, and it's all good. I see one little spot here that may be trying to come apart, so I'll glue that back together. Tissue paper seems to be the thing that causes it to pull apart, if anything. And I'm pretty sure it's probably because it has that slick side on it that doesn't want to adhere as well. So I'm just showing you how I went back, and I just decided to use some tacky glue and a paintbrush and just dab along those edges just to kind of secure it a little better in case it wanted to try to pull apart anymore. But that's just a really quick and simple way that you can just ensure that the edges are all glued down. So it doesn't take but a minute, and I got good results from that. So I just added a little bulb pin with a little scrunchy piece of lace and some little pearls. And so this could either be added to a tag, added to a page, you know, just wherever you need a pretty little dangle. Okay, if y'all remember, this was the piece that I just kind of put in there, all the leftover toilet paper right at the end of the video, and was hoping for the best. And I love it. I think it's actually turned out to be one of my favorites. And it actually stiffened up, and I'm not real sure why, because I never used glue. So, but portions of it are stiffer than others. So I'm wondering if it was the tissue paper or what played into that. But I just love how this turned out. And here's one of her Easter images. And another little word, the joy, of course. So I just made a little pocket out of that image. And added some cute little hearts. Added this little crepe paper ruffle that I had sewn. And some little pearls. And then inside, I just put one of her other little tags that I had kind of slimmed up a little bit to fit. It's just a cute little bunny tag. And I had this tiny little piece of tulle left that I had kind of gathered up, so I just stapled it on there. And that just slides right down in there. Looking pretty cute. And underneath there, I had just done a little eyelet with some seam binding ribbon. So you could also add a little pocket on the back if you wanted, or a tag to write on. But that is what I did with that piece. So I just made a really large tag out of that one. So we'll just go over a few things, different questions that y'all had, and just talk about some of it. So the biggest question that I had was, do the layers come apart? And for the most part, I have not had a problem at all with that. The only time that I do notice that it separates is, so the embossing folder may only do the design in a certain portion of the paper. And so the portion that is not embossed, that might tend to kind of have some pieces that pull apart, especially with the tissue paper. Yeah, it does separate a little bit, but honestly, if I wanted to use this page just like this, I would just trim off the edges where you can kind of tell it's toilet paper. I don't want that showing, but I would honestly be fine with using it like this, because I think that just adds another dimension to your page. But I just always, on this one, I always cut it out and use it as a pocket, so that's never a problem. So it's just totally, up to you whether you want to include the tissue paper and have to worry about that. But like I said, I've only found where it even separates the least little bit whenever I use tissue paper, and whenever there's elements in the design that are not really to where it would mold together as well as some of the others. So in the section where it's actually molded together and everything's embossed, I don't see any problem there. It's just mainly where there is no design to hold it together. I hope that makes sense. This one I did not have tissue paper on, and it's perfectly fine. There's nothing trying to come apart. It's all molded together. These are thin, but I just used it as like a little accent trim on certain pages of things that I've done, and so they held up perfectly fine for that too. And I have gone back and kind of inked and gone over the top with a little bit of grunginess with my little inker. So you know, that it didn't have any kind of effect on it to where it made it fall apart or anything. It worked really well. So I've had really good luck with all of my little trims, but I wanted to show you some examples of ways that I've already used these in some other projects. And so I've included some photos in this video, and we'll kind of go over it that way. So in this photo, I'm showing you a haberdashery project that I did for Sam Poole, and I had just added these little trims layered with lace just to the front of that project. And this one I added to the top of a tag that was a fold over. Here I just added a little torn piece that I had left to the side of a little piece of lace. And then here I'm just showing you how I used some more of them as pages in a journal. There's one with the tissue paper, and it just looked really pretty. It held together very well. So this one I just grungied a little bit more and added that little trim to another page in the journal. This one I had shown you in the video how I got the middle thicker than I did the outside, and so you could kind of see a line there. So I just went with it and folded it. So my plan for this is to kind of make a really pretty bookmark out of it, to where it won't even matter that, you know, it's got a different thickness on these parts. So I may even make a little pocket somehow. I'm not sure. I'll probably just glue this one together and make a nice bookmark. So like, you know, these, I have no problem with any of the edges. I do see a little bit on this one. This is the other one that I did not get exactly even. But you know, as you add your ephemera and you add things to the front, little images and stuff, you just get one. So like as you would add an image to the front of this, none of that would be visible. You would not even notice. And on the inside, you know, you usually would have more pieces inside. So there's not really a problem with that, even if that happens to you. And see, like on these that have this really, you can still tell it's toilet paper. So I would just take my scissors on those and I would just kind of trim them out. You could, I've tried to tear, but it's not the easiest to tear when it's dry. It kind of wants to rip in places you don't want it to. So I just kind of take my scissors and just trim right around where that embossing folder left the mark. And then that way you get a nice clean edge. But you don't have to do that if you'd rather leave portions of it, you know, where it looks rough. I just don't like it being obvious that it's toilet paper. You can still kind of see the design in some pieces of it, and the layers separate sometimes at the bottom. So I'd rather just trim it neat. So like this one I think is fine. The edges are more like handmade paper on this one. So that one I would leave and most likely just fold and put in a journal. So as far as the layers, like I said, the only ones I really see any lifting on is when you use the tissue paper. But like this one has tissue paper, but because the design is so intricate and it kind of molded it into that toilet paper much better on this one because of the design. So just kind of think about that. If you are going to use the tissue paper, just think about how it's actually going to shape whenever you put it, you know, into the toilet paper. And sometimes I have found that that extra layer of toilet paper on top does help to mold it together better. But there again, depending on the design and how much pressure and how much water and all the things that play into it, I have had one of them to separate from the top between the tissue paper and the toilet paper. So where the tissue paper laid on top of the toilet paper, I noticed that it tried to separate. But also, if it's not that bad, I just take a little bit of glue and just put it right back together. So it's fixable either way. And so some of you had suggested using like a glue mixed with your water. And so I did try that, and I'll show you the results of that in a minute. But also someone mentioned spraying it with spray starch. So I tried that too. So I'll show you the results. Okay, so I wanted to show you all the different things based on the suggestions and the questions that you had. I have been experimenting a little bit. These here are done on the brown paper towels. So this one I did with water, just water. And this is like those little brown paper napkins, I guess. They're like the paper towels that you have in the restroom, or you know, that come in your order when you do takeout, that kind of stuff. So it's just those little brown, either you can call them paper towels or napkins, whatever you want to call them. So I had some of those, and I just layered them up, kind of opened them up and folded them to where they would fit in my embossing folder. And they are really thin, so I had to do several layers of those. But this is water, and it's really good and sturdy. It looks like it has all, you know, shaped together. I don't see it trying to come apart in any way. Now this is the one that I did with the same thing, but I added some glue in my spray bottle. And honestly, it is a little bit stiffer, but not much. So maybe if I put more glue in the spray bottle, it would have been stiffer. But I can't tell a whole lot of difference. But if you wanted it a little bit stiffer, then the glue would be the way to go. And the only reason I don't like to add glue to most of mine is because I like to use them as pages in a journal. And so I don't want them to be, you know, hard and stiff when I do that. So a lot of times I use them as pages, and I would just rather them be a little bit softer and more pliable and bendable to go in a journal. So, but that is the difference between these two. And I will tell you that if you do use glue in your embossing folders and in your Cuttlebug and stuff, make sure you clean it up and make sure you do it quick, because some of these were really kind of hard to even get out of the embossing folders. I found they already wanted to stick to it, and so I had to work fast and then go rinse my embossing folder really quick, and if I got it on anything else, I had to wash that up too really quick. So it does require a little bit more cleanup in between each one, but if you're going for a little bit stiffer, then you know, like I said, there's not much difference, but you could always add a little more glue. But then you also have to keep it from stopping up your spray bottles. So keep all that in mind, you know, as you figure out what your needs are. And so this one is actually, these two are actually paper towels. Several of y'all had asked me if I'd ever tried paper towels, like the actual roll of paper towels. So I only have the thicker paper towels, and these aren't the name brand, they're the dollar store brand, but they're the really good ultra ones, and I love these paper towels. But for this project, I would suggest using a cheap paper towel, or what I did, since this is all I had, I took and separated the layers, and that way it's more workable in your embossing machine. It won't try to keep its shape, you know, that as much, because it's thinner and can be more pliable in there. So I just folded them in half. Actually, I tore them, and that way I could just layer on top of each other, depending on your embossing folder that you're using. If you need it longer, then I would just leave it. But then I did, I think, 8 layers. You could try the 4, because I'm sure that would still be plenty. Here's 4. But on these, I actually went ahead and did 2 paper towels. So I split them and folded them and layered them all up like that. And so this one's just with water. And it looks like it's going to hold pretty good. I'm not sure how it's, you know, I mean, you can, you know, if you could find the layers. But there again, you could actually separate them and use them individually too. So I'm not real sure how the paper towels are going to hold up long term, because they don't seem to mesh as well. They seem to keep their form in itself. They don't want to mold to each other. Like the toilet paper just kind of mushes, and when it wets, it just forms this big you know, wet blob. And so as it goes through the embosser, it all kind of just molds together. But now the paper towels are stiffer and they tend to want to stay in their own shape. So if you're buying a really good paper towel that, you know, is made to withstand and not tear, then it's probably not going to do as well for this. I would go with a cheaper one that literally, you know, just falls apart when you wet it, and that way it's going to want to conform to the shape of the embossing folder. So this is another one that I did, but I did add glue to this one. So let's see. It's still wanting to pull apart though. But I mean, it's at least a little stiffer. You could actually use this and not worry about it, you know, tearing. I mean, it still would, I'm sure, if you pulled it, but it would hold its shape better and be a little bit more durable, I think. But also something to notice is you can still see the little dots of the paper towel in the paper. Now, not that that's a bad thing, because it does add another little design element in it. But just keep that in mind. It just depends on what you're going for. And so the glue does help to stiffen this a little better. And I mean, I'm purposely pulling these apart. They probably would be fine just leaving them alone if you trimmed them. Let's try trimming it. Because these are honestly, this is new for me too. I'm not real sure about all this. This is not something that I have tried before. So I am winging it here, and we're learning this together. But I was willing to try it. So when I cut it, you don't find the edge to pull apart anymore. So that's a good thing. So once you trim off those edges, it looks like it's a little safer, and it's not going to pull apart as easy. So there would be a cute little page in a journal. These pages are staying stiffer. They're not near, like, you can't bend them as easy. These just pretty much bend on their own and just flop. But these hold their shape better. So I would suggest adding the glue if you're going to layer the paper towels. And that would at least stiffen it and help it to stay together better. But just try it out. Just experiment, because, you know, depending on the brand of paper towels, you might get totally different results. So, and something else about the paper towels. So I found that as I layered these and started, you know, spritzing them with the water, paper towels are made to hold water. So I would spritz them thinking that there wasn't that much water in there, because honestly, I hadn't spritzed them very much. And as I ran them through, water just poured from them. So just be careful about that, because they're made to absorb water and to hold the water. And so they ended up having more in them than what I would have ever realized. Just be prepared to have a towel ready to get the extra water wiped up off your table, your surface, your embossing machine. These are paper napkins that I pulled the top layer off. I had added that in the little text on my video last time, that paper napkins worked good too. And this is what I was talking about. I had totally forgot to do that part of the video last time. So I wanted to make sure that I used some of my pretty napkins. These right here, I added spray starch to. This one I had gone through the embosser with just water, and I added spray starch after. And so it did stiffen it a little bit, some places more than others, because I couldn't get my spray starch to spray really good in the first round. But it does look like it's holding its shape pretty good. So, and it looks like it's going to stay together. So I think the spray starch worked too. So this, I layered the toilet paper. You can wet the toilet paper before, or you can go ahead and put your napkin and spritz it all at one time, because the napkin will also absorb the water, you know, really good. So either way on that is fine. And then I sprayed it with my spray starch really good and ran it through the embosser. And so it looks like that's going to be a good one too. That looks nice. And this is toilet paper, so all these are going to be toilet paper. But I love using the napkins because it gives you a whole different effect when you have these beautiful designs on it. And so this one was a napkin too. Okay, this one was just toilet paper, and you can kind of see I didn't get it real even with the toilet paper. You can kind of see lines. But this one I added the spray starch to. And this one, it's got a little bit of stiffness to it, but it's not a lot of difference on it either. But the starch does seem to help a little bit. Now this one, I don't know why, but when I ran it through my embosser, it tore the inside of my design here. So I just cut that part out, and I'm going to use it as a frame. So it's pretty. That same blue napkin. But this one was also starch, so you can kind of see how it did stiffen it a little bit, but not a whole lot. So if you want them a little stiffer, but you don't necessarily want to fool with the white glue in your spray bottle, then I would just recommend spraying them with a little spray starch and see how that works for you. Because it did stiffen them up a little bit, and you may could go back and spray them again, you know, after you take them out. So that's just something you can kind of play with and see what results you get. So this here was toilet paper, and I did spritz them with the glue. This is my little Tim Holtz medallion dies, and they turn out so pretty. These dies are like some of the best dies in embossing folders I have used, because they give such clean cuts and such intricate little designs. But the glue did work well. You can see they're kind of warped a little bit as they dried. So, you know, you'd have to just straighten them out. But the glue did stiffen them up. So if you want your ephemera to be a little stiffer, then that would definitely work. And then this one too, I used the glue in. So probably just have to lay something on them and flatten them really good. And if you want them, you know, not to have any warp to them. But the glue did help to stiffen them for sure. So that's a very good option. But don't forget to clean every time, because they really did try to stick in there. I had to kind of dig them out because the glue was making them stick. So just be sure and clean all of your stuff really good each time you run it through. I also had someone suggest that like to use a hair dryer on your embosser when you're done and when you get it all cleaned up, and just to get any moisture that might still be in there. And that was a really good idea. So if you find that a lot of water does go through your embosser, then that might be something you can do to make sure that you got all the water out. Somebody else asked about how I clean, and honestly, I just take it to the sink and rinse it off really good, rub it a little bit. With the glue, I had to kind of rub and make sure I got it all off. You could even get a little rag and wipe them that way under the water. But I just rinse mine really good. If I'm just using water and, you know, everything comes out clean, then I don't even worry about it. But if I'm using glue or any kind of dye, coffee dye or anything like that, then I go ahead and rinse them really good. But normally I just take them to the sink and wash them underneath the faucet and make sure I've gotten anything that would be on them off, and then just dry them lightly with a towel. So that's pretty much easy peasy cleaning those. Somebody else had mentioned that using beet juice and onion and tea, which I've used the tea for sure, and I've used the beet juice because I love beets anyway. So when I get a can, I'll always save the juice and put it in a bottle, spritz it on my papers just to get this beautiful pink, kind of a purpley pink, and I just love it. So definitely try the beet juice if you haven't already. I just buy a can of beets and just pour the juice. You can water it down if you want. I usually don't. And just spritz whatever you're working on. Do them just like coffee dyed paper and anything else you would use. But that's what this is. So this is just spritzing it totally with beet juice, no water. And so it made this really pretty pink color. Now this one I wet first, and then I added the beet juice, and I actually did it on this side. So it did a really strong color on that side, but on the other side where I had put the water first, and it actually ended up being the correct side, it added this really pretty kind of an ombre look about it. So that turned out really nice. And then these I had run through with the beet juice too, with these little dyes. So it gives a really pretty color. So there's another option. So the coffee dye, the tea dye, the avocado dye, beet juice. I haven't tried the onion. So that's another option I'll have to try in the future. Somebody had also asked about when I layer the toilet paper in the embossing folder. So what they were asking is if, you know, you put them all either vertical or horizontal, if I had ever tried doing it the like vertical and horizontal. And I've layered them to where I put some this way and some this way. Either way, I haven't noticed where it makes a difference in the strength of it, but possibly it would. But I have done several of them and I couldn't tell the difference. But you know, that doesn't mean that you won't. That's another option whenever you are layering your toilet paper in your embossing folders. As far as adding any kind of other elements to it, so I showed you where I added the Luna paste and then also the little bit of paint at the top, and it held up perfect, no problem there. And then I added the distress ink to this, and I've added it on a lot of projects that I've done using the toilet paper. So no problem with that at all. Well, I'm thinking that's covered all the questions and the suggestions. So, but if you have any more, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll be more than glad to answer the best I can or to give you any suggestions. We're all just here to help each other and to learn from each other. So I really appreciate any suggestions that y'all have. I know several of you have already told me that you have made some and had really good results with them. So I'm so glad to hear that, and I'm so glad that you are having fun creating this embossed paper. So who'd have thought toilet paper, right? And it just amazes me how these embossing folders can just totally transform a plain old piece of paper, even toilet paper, and make something so beautiful, just a work of art. So I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you have too. So I hope you got lots of ideas, and just let me know in the comments the kind of results you had. Thank y'all so much, and I really, really appreciate y'all. I hope this was helpful, and I will be back soon. God bless.